Average used to be safe. Average used to be acceptable. Average used to mean you could show up, do what was required, and still get by. But those days are gone. The world has changed the price of admission, and average no longer covers the cost. Today, average is expensive. Average costs you your dreams, your options, your freedom, and eventually your self-respect. That is why you can't afford average anymore. Average is not just a level of performance, it is a mindset, and that mindset quietly determines the direction of your entire life. Most people don't plan to live an average life. They drift into it. They wake up one day and realize they've been busy for years, but not making meaningful progress. Average thinking convinces you that doing what is required is enough, that showing up is the same as standing out, and that time alone will fix what discipline avoids. But time does not improve people, it only reveals who they have chosen to become. The danger of average is that it feels reasonable. It sounds logical to say, I'm doing better than some, or at least I'm trying. But life does not reward comparison, it rewards commitment. When you compare yourself to those doing less, you shrink your own potential. You lower the standard just enough to feel comfortable, and comfort becomes your prison. Average effort produces average skills, and average skills produce average opportunities. Over time, those limited opportunities turn into frustration, because deep down you know you are capable of more. The marketplace does not pay you for your time, it pays you for your value. Two people can work the same hours and earn completely different lives. The difference is not luck, it is value. Value is the result of learning, practicing, refining, and improving. Average people rarely invest seriously in themselves. They wait for motivation. They wait for clarity. They wait for the perfect moment. High achievers understand something simple. Clarity comes from action, confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from disciplined practice. Average habits create invisible ceilings. You may not notice them today, but you will feel them tomorrow. You will feel them when opportunities pass you by because you are not prepared. You will feel them when responsibilities increase, but your capacity stays the same. You will feel them when pressure reveals your weaknesses instead of your strength. Life does not ask if you are comfortable, it asks if you are capable. An average preparation is never enough when life raises the stakes. There is also a cost to average that people rarely talk about, the internal cost. When you repeatedly settle, you lose trust in yourself. You begin to doubt your ability to follow through. Promises to yourself get broken quietly, and over time, your self-respect erodes. You may look successful on the outside, but inside there is a constant tension, a feeling that you are underperforming your potential. That tension is not meant to torture you, it is meant to wake you up. Growth requires a decision, not a wish, not a resolution, a decision. The decision to raise your standards. The decision to no longer negotiate with excuses. The decision to do the small, uncomfortable things daily that average people avoid. Reading instead of scrolling. Practicing instead of procrastinating. Preparing instead of hoping. These choices do not seem dramatic in the moment, but they compound. And compounding is the quiet force behind every extraordinary life. You don't escape average by dramatic breakthroughs. You escape it by daily disciplines. Success is not a single event. It is a predictable outcome of consistent behavior. If you improve your skills slightly each day, your confidence grows. As your confidence grows, your actions change. As your actions change, your results change. Eventually, your environment changes. But it all starts with the inner decision that average is no longer acceptable. Another truth is this: average is crowded. Most people live there. That is why competition is fierce and rewards are small at that level. When you commit to personal growth, you separate yourself. Fewer people are willing to pay the price of discipline, learning, and responsibility. That separation creates opportunity. Opportunity always flows toward those who are prepared, not those who are merely interested. You cannot control the economy, the competition, or the past, but you can control your standards. You can control what you read, what you practice, what you tolerate, and what you expect from yourself. When you raise your standards, life responds. Not instantly, but inevitably. Better results are not a miracle, they are a consequence. The real question is not whether you have potential. Everyone does. The real question is whether you will develop it. Potential unused becomes regret. Ability undeveloped becomes frustration. But potential invested wisely becomes confidence, freedom, and purpose. Decide to invest in yourself. Decide to grow intentionally. Decide that average thinking, average habits, and average effort will no longer define you. Because the moment you stop settling for average, you don't just change what you do, you change who you become. And when you change who you become, everything else begins to change with you. Average is not just something you do, it is something you accept. And whatever you accept, you eventually normalize. At first, average feels temporary. You tell yourself it's just for now, just until things get better, just until the right opportunity comes along. But life rarely improves by accident. What you tolerate today becomes the standard you live with tomorrow. That is how average slowly turns into a permanent lifestyle instead of a short season. Most people underestimate how demanding life becomes over time. In the early years, you can survive on talent, energy, and good intentions. But later, life starts sending bigger bills, financial pressure, family responsibilities, health concerns, missed chances. When those demands arrive, average effort collapses. Wishing you had worked harder on yourself 5 or 10 years earlier does nothing to change the moment. Preparation is always cheaper than regret, but average thinking refuses to prepare early. Average people often confuse motion with progress. They stay busy, fill their days, attend meetings, run errands, and check boxes. At the end of the week, they are exhausted, but nothing meaningful has changed. Activity without direction drains you. Discipline with purpose builds you. The question is not how busy you are, the question is how much you are becoming. Growth is not measured by effort alone, but by intentional improvement. Life rewards those who develop rare combinations of skill, attitude, and discipline. Average development creates common ability, and common ability earns common rewards. If you want uncommon results, you must be willing to live uncommon days. That does not mean working nonstop. It means working with intention. It means deciding that your personal growth is a daily priority, not an occasional hobby. When you work harder on yourself than on anything else, everything else begins to work better. Average thinking also shows up in how people handle responsibility. It looks for someone to blame: the economy, the system, the boss, the past. But progress begins the moment you take full ownership of your results. Responsibility is not a burden, it is power. The moment you accept that your life is largely shaped by your choices, you regain control. Average people wait for permission to change. High achievers give themselves permission to improve. There is a hidden danger in living at the average level. You become replaceable. In a fast-changing world, replaceable people are vulnerable. Skills become outdated, roles disappear, and comfort zones get disrupted. The safest place you can invest is in yourself, your thinking, your abilities, your adaptability. When you become valuable, you become resilient. When you stay average, you become optional. Growth requires sacrifice, and this is where many people hesitate. They want better results without changing their routines. They want confidence without practice, rewards without effort, success without discomfort. But every next level of life demands a new version of you. If you keep doing what you've always done, you'll keep getting what you've always gotten. Change is not convenient, but stagnation is costly. Average relationships reinforce average standards. Conversations stay shallow. Goals remain small. Complaints replace solutions. Over time, you begin to think this is normal. But your environment shapes your expectations. If you want to grow, you must expose yourself to ideas and people that stretch you. Not everyone will understand your desire to improve, and that's fine. Growth often feels lonely at first, but it leads to a life with options. Another cost of average is delayed potential. You don't fail dramatically, you fade slowly. Dreams get postponed. Goals get adjusted downward. Passion turns into routine. One day, you realize you've become very good at surviving, but not very good at living. That realization can either break you or awaken you. It is not too late to raise your standards, but the longer you wait, the higher the price becomes. The solution is not perfection, it is progression. Decide to improve one area of your life. Strengthen one skill. Eliminate one weak habit. Add one discipline. Momentum builds from small wins. As you keep promises to yourself, confidence returns. As confidence grows, courage follows. And with courage, you begin to expect more from yourself and from life. You cannot control how fast the world changes, but you can control how intentionally you grow. The future does not belong to the average, it belongs to the prepared. Make the decision now to outgrow the version of yourself that settles. Choose growth over comfort, discipline over excuses, and responsibility over blame. Because average is not neutral, it is expensive. And the cost is paid in missed potential, limited choices, and quiet regret. Decide today that you will no longer pay that price. Average is often defended as balance, but in reality it is usually avoidance. It is the quiet agreement you make with yourself to not push too hard, not risk too much, and not expect too much. You tell yourself you are being realistic, but what you are really doing is protecting your comfort. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it has a long-term cost. It keeps you exactly where you are, while time continues to move forward without you. One of the great illusions of average is the belief that tomorrow will be different without you becoming different. People hope for better income, better health, better confidence, better opportunities, yet they repeat the same routines every day. Hope without change is not a strategy, it is a delay. Life responds to who you are, not to what you wish for. If you want different results, you must be willing to adopt different standards. Average thinking keeps your goals small so your effort can stay small. You aim low not because you lack ability, but because you fear disappointment. Yet avoiding disappointment does not protect you from regret. In fact, regret grows stronger every time you choose safety over growth. It comes from knowing you could have tried harder, learned more, and stretched further, but didn't. That quiet knowledge becomes heavier with time. Life has a way of testing your preparation when you least expect it. An opportunity appears. A crisis arrives. A responsibility increases. In those moments, average effort is exposed. You cannot suddenly perform at a higher level than you have practiced. Pressure does not create character, it reveals it. If you have been living casually, pressure will feel overwhelming. If you have been living intentionally, pressure becomes manageable. Another cost of average is that it limits your influence. You may think your life only affects you, but that is rarely true. Your habits influence your family. Your standards shape your children. Your attitude impacts your workplace. When you settle, others unconsciously learn that settling is acceptable. When you grow, you give permission to others to grow as well. Personal development is not selfish, it is responsible. Average also shows up in how people manage their time. Hours are wasted because days are not planned. Energy is drained because priorities are unclear. People say they are too busy, but what they really mean is they are unfocused. Time is not the problem, direction is. When you live with intention, even limited time produces results. When you live casually, unlimited time still leads to frustration. There is a difference between being patient and being passive. Patience is working steadily while results are developing. Passivity is waiting without effort. Average people often call passivity patience to justify inaction, but growth demands engagement. You must be actively learning, adjusting, and improving. Standing still in a moving world is the fastest way to fall behind. You don't rise above average by dramatic acts of willpower. You rise by installing better daily systems. Systems determine outcomes more than motivation ever will. Motivation comes and goes, but systems stay. A system of reading, practicing, reflecting, and refining compounds into mastery over time. Average lives are usually the result of average systems repeated daily. Another truth is that average is emotionally draining. It creates a constant gap between who you are and who you know you could be. That gap produces dissatisfaction, even if life looks stable on the surface. Many people try to fill that dissatisfaction with entertainment, distractions, or consumption, but it never works. Fulfillment comes from progress, not from comfort. You feel alive when you are growing. Raising your standards will feel uncomfortable at first. You will notice your weaknesses more clearly. You will outgrow old habits and some familiar conversations. That discomfort is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is a sign you are expanding. Growth stretches you before it strengthens you. If you avoid the stretch, you also avoid the strength. The moment you decide that average is no longer acceptable, your behavior begins to change. You become more careful with your time, more selective with your influences, more disciplined with your actions. You stop asking, is this easy? And start asking, is this useful? That shift alone can transform your future. Life does not demand that you be perfect, but it does demand that you be intentional. Average living is accidental living. Intentional living produces progress. Decide to live with purpose. Decide to improve daily. Decide to build a life that reflects your true potential rather than your temporary comfort. Because in the end, the greatest cost of average is not what you lose materially. It is the person you never become. Average living slowly trains you to underestimate yourself. It teaches you to believe that your current limits are permanent, that your skills are fixed, and that your circumstances define your future. Over time, this belief becomes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone in progress and start seeing yourself as someone who has peaked. That belief is one of the most expensive lies you can ever accept, because it quietly shuts the door on growth before you even try. One of the most damaging habits of average thinking is emotional decision-making. You act when you feel inspired and retreat when you don't. You work harder on good days and give up ground on bad days. But life does not move according to your emotions. Progress belongs to those who can act with discipline, regardless of how they feel. Emotions are temporary, habits are permanent. When you build your life around feelings, your results remain unstable. When you build your life around principles, your results become predictable. Average also shows up in how people respond to failure. Instead of learning, they retreat. Instead of adjusting, they justify. Failure is not the enemy, refusal to learn is. Every setback carries information, but average thinking treats failure as a verdict rather than feedback. Growth-minded individuals see mistakes as tuition. They ask, what can this teach me? And then move forward wiser. Average thinking asks, who can I blame? And stays stuck. Another hidden cost of average is lost momentum. Success is easier to maintain than to restart. When you stop growing, restarting feels overwhelming. That is why small daily disciplines matter so much. They keep momentum alive. Momentum creates confidence, and confidence fuels action. Without momentum, even simple tasks feel heavy. With momentum, difficult challenges feel manageable. Average people often wait for external validation before they commit fully. They want recognition, encouragement, or approval before giving their best. But external validation is unreliable. It comes late, if it comes at all. The most successful individuals learn to self-validate. They develop internal standards and hold themselves accountable, even when no one is watching. Excellence begins in private, long before it is noticed in public. Life also has a way of magnifying your weaknesses if you ignore them. A small lack of discipline may seem harmless in your 20s, but it becomes costly in your 40s. A minor skill gap may not matter early on, but it can block major opportunities later. Average thinking postpones improvement. Growth-oriented thinking addresses weaknesses early, when the cost of change is low. Delay makes everything harder. Another reality is that average effort limits your earning power, not just financially, but emotionally and intellectually. When you stop learning, your thinking becomes rigid. You rely on outdated ideas. You resist change instead of adapting to it. In a world that rewards flexibility and creativity, rigid thinking is dangerous. Continuous learning keeps you relevant. Average learning makes you obsolete. Raising your standards requires courage. You must be willing to see the gap between where you are and where you could be. Many people avoid this because it is uncomfortable. But avoiding the truth does not eliminate the gap. It only hides it. Awareness is the first step to improvement. Once you see clearly, you can act intentionally. You do not need to overhaul your entire life to escape average. You need to take ownership of your daily choices. What you read, what you practice, what you tolerate, what you repeat. These small decisions shape your identity. Over time, your identity shapes your destiny. Average identities produce average destinies. Developed identities create expanded possibilities. There will be moments when growth feels lonely. When you choose discipline over distraction, you may feel out of place. When you raise your standards, some people may misunderstand you. That is part of the price of progress. But the reward is freedom, the freedom that comes from competence, confidence, and self-trust. Freedom is rarely found in comfort, it is found in capability. The goal is not to impress others. The goal is to respect yourself, to know that you did not waste your potential, to know that when life demanded more, you were becoming more. That confidence cannot be given to you. It must be earned through effort and consistency. Average living slowly drains that confidence. Intentional living restores it. Choose the path of growth, even when it is uncomfortable. Choose discipline over ease. Choose progress over excuses. Because the real tragedy is not that life is hard. The real tragedy is living beneath your capacity when you were capable of so much more. Average living eventually leads to a quiet form of disappointment. The kind no one else sees, but you feel every day. It is the feeling that you are busy but not fulfilled, active but not advancing, surviving but not truly building. This disappointment does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates slowly as days pass without deliberate progress. The danger is not failure. The danger is becoming comfortable with almost. One reason people remain average is because they underestimate the power of consistency. They look for intensity instead of continuity. They believe success comes from big breakthroughs, dramatic changes, or rare opportunities. But life is shaped more by what you do repeatedly than by what you do occasionally. Average habits repeated daily create average lives. Disciplined habits repeated daily create extraordinary momentum. Consistency is not exciting, but it is unstoppable. Average thinking often negotiates with effort. It asks, do I really need to do this today? Or can I skip just this once? Those negotiations seem harmless, but they compound into weak discipline. Strong lives are built by people who keep their promises to themselves, especially on the days when it would be easy not to. Self-trust is built through follow-through. Without self-trust, confidence remains fragile. Another cost of average is that it narrows your future options. When you don't develop skills, you become dependent on circumstances. You tolerate jobs you dislike, environments that drain you, and situations you have outgrown. Growth expands options. Skill creates leverage. Discipline creates independence. The more capable you become, the more choices you have. Average ability keeps you at the mercy of conditions you cannot control. Life has seasons, and each season demands something different from you. There are seasons for learning, for building, for leading, and for enjoying. Average living ignores seasons. It treats every day the same. Intentional living asks, what does this season require of me? Sometimes it requires patience, sometimes urgency, sometimes sacrifice. Those who grow are those who respond correctly to the season they are in. Average people often wait for confidence before they act, not realizing that confidence is a byproduct of action. You don't think your way into courage, you act your way into it. Every small act of discipline strengthens your belief in yourself. Over time, that belief changes how you show up in the world. Hesitation fades. Clarity increases. But none of this happens without movement. There is also a spiritual and mental cost to average living. When you stop stretching yourself, your mind becomes dull. Curiosity fades. Vision shrinks. You stop asking meaningful questions about your future. Growth keeps your mind alive. Learning renews your perspective. Challenge sharpens your character. Without these, life becomes repetitive, even if it looks stable. Raising your standards will expose gaps in skill, focus, discipline, and knowledge. This is not a reason to retreat, it is a reason to train. You cannot close a gap you refuse to acknowledge. Awareness is progress. The moment you see clearly, you gain power to change. Average thinking avoids this clarity because it demands responsibility. Growth thinking welcomes it because it leads to freedom. One of the greatest shifts you can make is moving from a consumption mindset to a creation mindset. Average living consumes content, opinions, entertainment, time. Growth-oriented living creates skills, value, ideas, solutions. Creators shape their environment. Consumers are shaped by it. When you choose to create value, you step into a position of influence and purpose. The decision to outgrow average is deeply personal. No one can force it on you. It must come from an honest conversation with yourself. Not about what you want, but about what you are willing to become. Dreams demand development. Goals demand growth. A better future demands a better version of you. You will never regret the effort you put into becoming more disciplined, more skilled, and more intentional. You will never regret reading the book, practicing the skill, or making the hard choice. Regret only comes from knowing you had the chance to grow and chose comfort instead. Average living asks you to settle. Life, at its best, invites you to expand. Choose expansion. Choose progress. Choose to become the kind of person your future will thank you for. Because when all is said and done, success is not about outperforming others. It is about outgrowing the version of yourself that was willing to settle for average. One day, life will ask you a serious question. What did you do with your potential? And in that moment, excuses won't matter. Intentions won't matter. Only results will speak. Decide now that your answer will not be, I settled. Decide that average is no longer acceptable. Decide that you will pay the price of discipline now instead of the price of regret later. Because here is the truth: average is no longer cheap. It costs too much. It costs your dreams, your confidence, and your future. And that price is far too high. You can't afford average anymore.